This week, I entered a milestone in my rabbinic training as a rabbinical student, where I delivered my senior sermon. Each student is given the opportunity to give a sermon and really have their spotlight moment. So this past Monday at school, in the presence of many of our PAS clergy, I was able to deliver that sermon to my school community, and that is the sermon I'm going to share with you this morning. And I also want to say that I have a lot of gratitude for the PAS community for helping me in my rabbinic journey as I become a rabbi, and I just want to say thank you for being part of that process for my learning. As a rabbi, to be on the cusp of graduating rabbinical school, I'm trying to understand what really is my job as a darshan, a speaker, a homiletician, and really, what's my job as a rabbi? After all, no matter what type of rabbinic career I enter, giving drashot, giving sermons, is going to be at the core of my rabbinic life. And when I say drashot, giving sermons, I'm not just talking about delivering a homily to the congregation, but I'm talking about a fundamental stance that I hope to take in my relationship between Jewish text and the Jewish people. Because being a darshan, being a speaker, a preacher, is a lifestyle, and it's a way of interacting with the world. Fortunately, this week's Torah portion of Toldot beautifully plays into this question, this guiding question of what truly is the role of a darshan and of a rabbi. We can start by doing a close reading of a single verse from our Torah portion, listening carefully to the pshat, or a contextual reading of the verse. So in Genesis chapter 25, verse 22, we read, "V'yitrotzetzu habanim b'kirba, v'tomer im ken lama ze anochi, v'telech lidrosh et Hashem." V'yitrotzetzu habanim b'kirba. The children struggled in her womb. V'tomer im ken lama ze anochi. And she said, "If so, why am I thus?" V'telech lidrosh et Hashem. And she went to inquire of God. After being barren, Rivka is finally pregnant, and there was a struggle in her womb. And she responds by calling out, "If so, why am I thus?" And there are many different translations of this verse, this short piece of our text. Everett Fox and JPS translate this second phrase of the verse by saying, "If so, why do I exist?" While the context seems to suggest distress, despondency, despair, the all too familiar JPS asterisk meaning of Hebrew uncertain reflects ambiguity in the phrase. Robert Alter translates the verse as, "If so, why me? What did I do to deserve this?" Or, "What's my particular role in the larger narrative of the Jewish people?" And I would venture to add that perhaps Rivka is asking a timeless question of pregnant women. If all I wanted was a baby, why is pregnancy so painfully difficult? In just this middle section of the verse, there's so much uncertainty and ambiguity. And in the final phrase of the verse, we find the following words, "V'telech lidrosh et Hashem." And she went to inquire of God. And the translators use this phrase, and she went to inquire of God, as a quaint line, like she went on a casual stroll to ask God a simple question. But the context suggests something much stronger. The middle part of the verse, why me, informs the end of our verse, where she goes to inquire of God. Rivka is in distress. Her world is destabilized, radically out of kilter. She's demanding a response to deep personal anguish. It's only by listening closely and contextually to each part of the verse that we can attempt to more clearly understand Rivka's plight. The first step of being a darshan, being a preacher, and being a rabbi is to come from a place of receptivity and reverence. We have to trust the text, to trust that the Torah, perhaps with the help of some commentaries, is like an ever-flowing spring. And as my dear Professor Barry Holtz put it, where there are questions that demand answers and where there are pressures that must be addressed, midrash, commentaries, come into play as a way of resolving crisis. The midrash and commentaries help to better explain the problematic of the text. And with this in mind, we can look at one of Rashi's comments on our verse. Explaining the word lidrosh, to inquire, our classical medieval French commentator Rashi says that Rivka went to inquire, and where did she go to inquire? She went to the Beit Midrash, the house of study. And Rashi is quoting from Midrash Breshit Rabbah, which says that to go and inquire of God meant to go to the houses of prayer and study of her time, because going before the wise was like going before God. Meaning, according to Rashi and the Midrash, Rivka went to the sages of her time to interpret her situation. And the Midrash and Rashi's textual exegesis clarifies what one does in a time of distress. One goes to the Beit Midrash, the house of inquiry, the place where you can understand your existential situation, your burning questions and challenges. And in reading our text from Genesis, Rashi and the Midrash actually asserted themselves as authorities for responding to human inquiry. They were telling us that when our people have moments of distress and questioning, we've set up a system where there are individuals who are ideally helping to respond to those situations. And Rivka, that's exactly what she's doing. I believe that the purpose of a darshan and the role of a rabbi, of a preacher, is to listen attentively to the voices of the texts and to the anguish, distress, and cry of those who sit before us. As darshanim, as a darshanit, as a rabbi, homileticians, we're here to engage in the overwhelming questions that flood our experience on this earth, to be attuned to the human existential condition and challenges of our time. We have to be listeners to both the past and the present, seeing the vitality in both moments. And as Heschel says, we cannot let Judaism become irrelevant, dull, oppressive, insipid. When faith is completely replaced by creed, worship by discipline, love by habit, when the crisis of today is ignored because of the splendor of the past, when faith becomes an heirloom rather than a living fountain when religion speaks only in the name of authority rather than with the voice of compassion, then its message becomes meaningless. A darshan, a preacher, and a rabbi is a mediator, a bridge between the past and the present, between the claims of the Torah and its interpreters and the needs of the people. If we only look at the faces in front of us, if we only listen to those who sit before us, then we end up using the text as a pretext, as an object, a tool, or as Buber would call it, an it. But if we only listen to Torah, then we're ignoring the images of God who sit before us. As the Midrash in the Mechilta teaches, there are 3 types of prophets. The first, who's loyal only to God and not the people. The second, who's loyal only to the people, but not to God. And the third, who's loyal to both God and the people. And like this third type of prophet, the darshanit and the rabbi that I aspire to become is both loyal to the people and to God's Torah. Thank you for being part of my journey, being part of those who sit before me as I also engage with Torah. And thank you for being part of my learning.